You've probably heard someone say that life is like a movie. But what if it's more than just a figure of speech? What if you're watching this video right now because you're actually living inside a computer simulation? Welcome to our channel. And today we're answering the extraordinary question, are we living in a simulation? Have you ever experienced déjà vu, a French term for already seen? You get this feeling that you've already lived through the experience you're currently having, but you know that logically, you haven't. This strange phenomenon has been described by many throughout history, from ancient Greek philosophers to French novelist and scientist Marcel. But it was until the early 20th century that it was first studied systematically by psychologist and physician Joseph Bonnet, who coined the term déjà vu. So far, there's no scientific consensus on the cause of déjà vu, but some experts believe it might be caused by temporary lapses in memory that trick the brain into thinking it remembering something that it experiencing for the first time. Now, while that explanation may be logical, déjà vu can also seem like a clue pointing towards something much bigger. Because déjà vu isn't the only weird phenomenon that seems to suggest we're reliving in a computer game. Let's take a look at the core idea. The philosopher Nick Bostrom came up with the simulation hypothesis in his 1993 paper titled Simulation Argument. In it, he describes how advanced civilizations might have the computing power to simulate entire realities, complete with histories, and even the ability to make decisions. And so, if it's possible for us to create such simulations, then it's likely that civilizations more advanced than ours would have done so long ago. If that's the case, then odds are we're already in one. Bostrom explains that there are three possible scenarios. First, civilizations never become advanced enough to run simulations. Second, they do achieve the ability to simulate realities, but they choose not to. And third, they choose to do it, which means we would be living in one of these simulations. Bostrom points to the fact that we can calculate pi to over 10 trillion digits, yet don't know the exact chemical composition of seawater. He argues that this mismatch between our high and low-level knowledge suggests that we're in the second scenario. Therefore, we're living in a simulation. If this is true, then we should be able to find clues in our reality that point towards being in a simulation, which brings us to part 2. What are the chances that you'll win $1 million? 1 in 1 million. That you'll meet your soulmate. 1 in 7 billion. That you'll be struck by lightning. 1 in 700,000. But what are the chances that you're living in a simulation? According to Elon Musk, 1 in billions. To support his simulation hypothesis, Bostrom cites several pieces of evidence that show our universe operates like a computer. For example, quantum physics reveals that the fabric of reality is made up of pixels of reality, called the Planck length, which is the smallest possible measurable length in the universe, about 1.6 by 10 to the negative 35 meters. All matter and energy are made up of smaller vibrating string. When these strings vibrate at different frequencies, they create different particles. The various particles combine to form atoms, molecules, stars, galaxies, and everything else in the universe. So when we zoom out, we see that the universe is just a collection of numbers. So far, this may sound pretty similar to a video game where every object is made up of ones and zeros. Another interesting clue is the uncanny mathematical order of the universe. There are a lot of constants that need to fall within a very narrow range for life to evolve and thrive. For example, the vacuum expectation of the Higgs boson must be between 10 to the negative 12 and 10 to the negative 10. If it were any higher or lower, stars wouldn't produce the elements necessary for life. Also, the gravitational constant can only be between 10 to the negative 40 and 10 to the negative 36. If it were any stronger, stars would collapse before igniting, and if it were any weaker, they would never ignite at all. These are just two examples of dozens of physical constants that need to be just right for life to thrive. It seems highly unlikely that all of these constants would just happen to line up perfectly. It seems more likely that the universe was fine-tuned for life. And if that's true, it could mean that we're living in a simulation. But perhaps the most compelling clue that we're living in a simulation comes from computer-like glitches. Déjà vu is one such glitch. As mentioned earlier, neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux believes that déjà vu happens because of temporary lapses in memory. But others argue that it's more than that. Consider this. When you have déjà vu, do you feel like you've just lived through this moment before? Or do you feel like you're reliving a memory of the past? Either way, you're experiencing something outside of the normal flow of time. If our entire reality is a simulation, then it is possible that there could be bugs in the system that allow us to temporarily access the source code and see what's going on behind the scenes. Another example of a computer glitch that some believe is proof that we reliving in a simulation is the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect is a phenomenon that refers to people sharing a false memory of a past event. The term comes from Nelson Mandela, the former president of South Africa who died in 2013. Many people incorrectly remember him dying in prison in the 1980s. So why would so many people share a false memory like this? Some believe that it's proof that we're reliving in a simulation and that the Mandela effect is a glitch in the Matrix. In a recent tweet, Elon Musk said that the chances of us being in base reality are 1 in billions. While he didn't explain his reasoning, it seems to be in line with his previous statements about the simulation hypothesis. In a 2015 interview with Rolling Stone, Musk said that he's not super religious, but he does think that we're living in a simulation. And in a 2020 interview with the futurist and author of The Age of Spiritual Machines, Ray Kurzweil, Musk said that he thinks the chances of us being in a simulation are much higher than people realize. That was part 2. Now let's move on to part 3. So far, we've explored the core idea and evidence behind the simulation hypothesis. But what are some of the arguments against it? After all, it is just a hypothesis, and there's no direct evidence to prove or disprove it. One argument against the simulation hypothesis is that humans have a natural tendency to project their own technology onto the world around them. For example, people in the Middle Ages believed that the Earth was flat because they didn't have the technology to prove otherwise. Similarly, we may believe that we're reliving in a simulation simply because we live in a technological age where simulations are commonplace. There's also the possibility that if simulations do exist, it may be impossible to prove it. After all, if we're in a simulation, then our reality is just a computer program. And if the creators of the simulation don't want us to know, then they can always write the code to prevent us from finding out. That was part 3. Now let's move on to part 4. So what? We're living in a simulation. What does it really change? Well, for starters, it could mean that nothing is real. If we're just living in a computer program, then everything we see, hear, touch and feel isn't real. It's just ones and zeros. This could have some pretty serious implications for our understanding of reality. It could also mean that we don't have free will. If we're just NPCs or non-player characters in a video game, then our actions are predetermined. We're just following a script. This could mean that we're not responsible for our actions and that we KU and be held accountable for them. Finally, it could mean that we're alone in the universe. If we're in a simulation, then it's likely that there are other simulations out there. This means that we may never know if there's intelligent life out there or if we're truly alone in the universe. So what if we found a way to escape the simulation? Would that be possible? If we're just living in a computer program, then it is theoretically possible that we could find a way to exploit a bug in the code and escape. However, this is just science fiction. There's no real evidence that any of this is possible. Whether we're living in a simulation or not, we have to ask ourselves, what kind of people do we want to be? If we're just lines of code, then it's up to us to decide how we want to behave. Do we want to be helpful or hurtful, kind or cruel? The fact that we even have to ask ourselves these questions shows that we're capable of great things. Whether we're code or flesh, the fact that we ask this question shows one thing. Consciousness is extraordinary. Thanks for watching. Do you think we're living in a simulation? Let us know your thoughts. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an upload. And as always, this has been our channel.